Hi there, my name is Darren Johnson, and the game that I designed is Savannah Survival. It's a two-player competitive game where you're doing worker placements to try to do a tug-of-war battle over a very limited number of resources. The player with the most points at the end of the game gets to stay and settle the territory, and the non-winning player has to move along and look for another home later on somewhere else. But the game starts with setting up the 9 environment cards. So each environment has 4 different terrain types on it. You have animals, you have fields, woods, and then water. And then the workers that you have 3 different types of workers. You have a gatherer, you have a hunter, a builder, and another hunter. Or another gatherer, sorry, not a hunter, sorry. So you have 2 gatherers, 1 hunter, 1 builder. And it's double-sided. We'll get to that later. In order to set up the game, there's a quick reference on this side that tells you how to set up. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's good. Okay. The way you do it is you act like you're a toddler and you just throw the environment cards in a big mess and you just mix it all around. Once it's nice and all mixed up, then you take it and you put it into a stack. Once it's in a nice little stack there, eventually, come on, there we go. Once it's in a stack, then you deal them out in a 3x3 grid. Starting with a face down, then a face up, face down, face up, face down, face up, face down, face up, face down. That way it's got a nice little mix match of the front and the back cards, and whoever dealt them out can't cheat as easily. So next step is to take the resource cards that the players will be battling over. You have animals, and then huts. Those go up first. Animals, huts. And then you have water, and then fish. And then lastly, you have fruit and fibers. So let's go out here. They're to be placed vertically between the 2 players. So we're going to pretend like I have my second player sitting right here. And then, starting with the black player, there's a black band indicating that this is the black player, and there's a gray band here indicating this is the gray player. So the black player goes first. And what they're going to do is they're going to place their worker however they see fit on 2 of the objective cards. Oh, by the way, when placing card, you can place on 1 or 2 cards, but you can never go outside of the 3x3 border. So I cannot place here, but I can place here, and it's usually a good idea to place on 2 cards anyway. That's typically more advantageous. So what I can do is try to get this this builder guy and this gatherer on 2 different territories. So this builder guy is good with building huts. So in order to build a hut, I need to put him in the woods. And the gatherer is good with fruit and with grains and with water. So I want to put him on one of those. All this is indicated on this quick reference card right here. It tells you what worker goes where and what the resources that you get to combat over. Or not combat over, but, fight for. But anyway, I'm going to pick the woods. And this is a woods and this is a field. So I'm going to place this guy here. At this point, because the first time in the game the resource is being activated, I will turn the card 90 degrees towards me, so I am the benefit. So these cards are numbered, as you can see here. So this one has a 4, this one has a 2. Oh, that 2 is backwards. The art needs a little work. Unfortunately, we're on a little bit of a time crunch with the artist. But anyway, so the hut is affected. So this goes 90 degrees, and the larger number is facing towards me. The smaller number is facing towards the opponent. The next thing that affected is the field, which is fibers. So the fiber is this the right side? Yes. So the large number, which is a 3 versus a 2, is going to face this way. Now, the second player can go. They can place their card anywhere they want to, except for on top of my card. You can never place your card on top of another player's card. Seems kind of straightforward for most worker placement games. But this worker is going to be like, you know what? I want to kill some daggone animals. So he's going to go with the hunter. And this space has a hunter, or has animals. And this space has a gatherer, and these are woods. So he's going to place his card here, so the animals will benefit him. So animals are going to turn this way, to where the 2 is facing the gray player, and the negative 2 is facing towards me. The field is the fiber. So they're also going to battle for fiber. So right now, black player has a 3, gray player has a 2. So this is going to rotate 180 degrees to favor them now. And this is pretty much how the game's going to go until all the resources are pretty much spoken for. However, it's back to the black player's turn. So black is going to pick up their card, and they must now flip it, and they have to use the side with the hunter and the gatherer. At this point, they must remove one of these two cards, and the card that they're going to choose is, let's say this one. They're going to move this card. So this is now out of the game. At this point, if there's an empty spot open with the cards adjacent to it, they may move those cards. Except this card has the opponent's worker on it, so this card cannot be moved. If a card has a worker on it, it cannot be taken and it cannot be moved. So for example, let's say I had placed my worker here and I were to remove the worker. These are the two cards I would remove, except this one has a worker on it, so this would be the card that I would take in that particular instance. Anyway, back to the empty slot. So with this empty slot here, one of these three cards is adjacent, so I can move one of these three cards over into this empty spot. I'm going to choose to move this guy over here. Oh, and again, this cannot be moved down because the opponent's worker's on it. So I'm going to move him over, and then now I have to use the hunter and the gatherer. And here we go. Here is some animals and some woods. So I'm going to place this guy here, and that will score me the animals, so I will flip this 180 degrees back towards my favor. And the woods, the gatherer in the woods gets to take fruit, which fruit is a rare commodity that is highly useful. Now it's back to gray player's turn. They're going to remove their card, flip it over to the other side, and do the same thing. So they're going to move this card. Now at this point, there are two cards that have only one adjacent card to them. And this card has two cards that is adjacent. So when one of the cards is going to be moved, you have to choose the card with fewer adjacent cards into the place with more adjacent cards. So for example, this card cannot be moved here because it would move from two adjacent cards to adjacent cards, whereas this has one adjacent card and it would gain two adjacent cards. And similarly, this has one adjacent card. Moving it here would give it actually three adjacent cards. So this is the one that's going to be moved because it has a higher number of new adjacent cards. So at this point, this player is going to be like, you know what, I want some fish, so I'm going to go here. So in the water space, if a, oh, yep. Oh, that's a builder. That's not a hunter. I did that wrong. Let's make believe. Let's pretend. So the hunter is going to go here in the water, and then the gatherer is going to go where the wild animals are. So he would put the, that is a great player, the number 2 fish versus number 1 fish. So number 2 goes to here, number 1 goes here. However, since the gatherer is now trying to fight basically a water buffalo or a jaguar, or not a jaguar because those are in the jungle, a rhino or a lion or whatever, he's going to have a negative effect happen to him. So the opponent is the one who gets to move the animals. Now in this instance, the opponent already has the higher number. So in this case, instead of flipping it back over or rotating it over, they flip it over to where they have the higher side now. And at this point, if the black player were to gain any more animals, nothing would happen because they already have the maximum value. If the gray player were to gain any more animals, instead of rotating it, it would instead flip back to where it's a smaller number and they have the smaller number again. If they got animals again, then they would flip it back this way. If they got animals again, then they would flip it over back the other way. And this is how the game progresses. The game continues and keep going back and forth until all the cards are snatched up, until there's only one remaining card on the table. If there's only one remaining card left, gray player is going to place their card on it, score the resources, and then that ends the game. So at this point, once the game is over, you add the animals plus the huts, and then you multiply the water times the fish, and then add that total to this, and then you multiply the fruit times the fiber and add that to the final total. Player with the highest score wins the game. In the event of a tie, since black player went first, gray player will win the tie. And that's the game.